Hi there. Happy Saturday. This day in history was busy. Busy. In 1776, the world's first submarine attack occurred. This was during the Revolutionary War. I didn't even know they had submarines back then. On September 7th, 1813, the United States gets its nickname, Uncle Sam. The name is linked to Samuel Wilson, a meat packer from Troy, New York, who supplied barrels of beef to the United States Army during the War of 1812. Wilson, who lived from 1766 to 1854, stamped the barrels with U.S. for United States, but soldiers began referring to the grub as Uncle Sam's. The local newspaper picked up on this story, and Uncle Sam eventually gained widespread acceptance as the nickname for and personification of the U.S. federal government. In 1864, in preparation for his march to the sea, Union General William T. Sherman ordered residents of Atlanta, Georgia, to evacuate the city. I found it interesting as to his reasoning for this, but you can read more about that at the link. On this day in 1876, the James Younger Gang attempted a bold daytime robbery of the Northfield, Minnesota bank. But the gang suddenly found itself surrounded by angry townspeople and were nearly wiped out. In 1911, on this day, Guillaume Apollinaire was arrested for stealing the Mona Lisa. The theft had taken place on August 22nd, but no evidence surfaced, so he was released after 5 days. 2 years later, a former employee of the Louvre, Vincenzo Peregia, was arrested while trying to sell the famous painting to an art dealer. In this case, crime did not pay. Wow. On this day in 1936, Buddy Holly was born. While the foundations of rock and roll was mostly laid down within 100 miles of the Mississippi River, I'm getting goosebumps, y'all. A significant contributor to its evolution was born 700 miles to the west. Man, I hope I don't start crying. On this day in 1936, Charles Hardin Holley was born in Lubbock, Texas. I've been to Lubbock. They have a bunch of Buddy Holly stuff up all over the place. It's pretty cool. When you think of the impact this astonishing young man had on music, it's really surprising to learn that his recording career lasted little more than 18 months. He died in 1959 at the tender age of 23 in rock and roll's most famous or infamous plane crash. Rest in peace, Buddy Holly. On this day in 1940, German bombers raided London in the first of 57 consecutive nights of bombing, which they called Blitzkrieg. I imagine you've heard of Blitzkrieg. That's what it was. That word, by the way, translates to lightning war. Lightning war, Blitzkrieg. In 1968, the birth of second-wave feminism occurred in the first ever protest against the Miss America pageant. Sometimes when I read these stories that occurred during my lifetime and I remember something about them, I think about where I was in my life. And when this happened, I would have been in junior high school. This was a shocking event for me, by the way. The protesters dumped feminine items that they considered to be symbols of oppression, such as bras, girdles, curlers, false eyelashes, wigs, and other items, into a giant freedom trash can that they intended to set on fire. They were not allowed to light a fire on top of the flammable boardwalk, but that's where the bra burners myth began. One newspaper picked it up, and I remember hearing about women burning their bras. On a personal note, while I am not and never have been pageant material, I appreciate my bras and false eyelashes and curlers and other items that were considered on that day to be symbols of oppression. I don't consider them oppressive at all. I imagine part of it has to do with being comfortable with self. On this day in 1977, President Jimmy Carter signed a treaty that would give Panama control over the Panama Canal beginning in the year 2000. And there's actually two stories about that event in this day in history. Two articles about that, so check it out if you want to know more. On this day in 1996, actor and hip-hop recording artist Tupac Shakur was shot several times in Las Vegas, Nevada, after attending a boxing match, and died in a hospital several days later. You can learn more about all of these stories at history.com. There's a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And feel free to share this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Here's my coffee. Hooray for coffee. There's that pen. All right. No evidence. Okay. In 1968, the birth of... And Mom said, "Let there be light." You can learn more about all of these hissy fits linked to Samuel Wilson, who was a meat packer from Troy. Words. I gotta get a refill.